Okay, for our last one today, let's see if we can fly through this pretty quickly. Give myself some parameters. We've got every drawing, like I've probably said many times already, we're really at this stage just looking to map everything out. So I understand that this probably looks like absolutely nothing, but you see what happens. And so we're just getting general shapes. So this is about like, I do really want to get this angle. It's basically like that. And then just gonna clean this up a little bit because a lot of white is gonna go in there, and I want to be able to keep that white pretty like crisp and clean. And if it mixes with too much of the graphite, it ends up not looking as white as it can be. So lines so they're more definitive and confident. Good. And then we've got our background there, this there, got like some fabric there, and then we've got a bit of fabric there, which makes a bit of a triangle. And there. I'm just going to change this a little bit. I still feel like it's maybe a little it's that backside. So that's quite round. And it tapers off to like right there. Which drops like. Sorry guys, I'm fussing. But it's good for you to see because this is exactly the point of doing these exercises, is to build up this hand-eye coordination and just always make sure that our drawings are right before we move on. Because even if you think you'll be able to fix it later, chances are you won't. You can, but it just takes a lot of like really, really specific focused energy to not get lost in the lines that you already have drawn. So I've learned it's just better to erase and get it right. Okay, that's the other thing that I'm gonna erase because again, that just got a little scratchy and scumbly, and I want the white to be able to go down really well. Again, just so you guys understand what I'm doing, I'm just making a bunch of little tweaks. There's just like little things here and there that didn't feel or look right to me, so. Now, what I'm gonna do before I put in the lights, I'm going to map in our shadows so that everything is clear, and basically so everything is clear. So then there's this, and then we'll do, there's a shadow here. Like that. Okay, great. We go down there. It's just, remember, main shapes. Lovely. So I'm just gonna get started on shading in what we just mapped out so that we do just like have an idea. Per usual, we're keeping everything very, very light. And I'm actually being extra cautious this time since I did so quickly go so dark and just kind of didn't acknowledge the paper for what it is. Now I'm trying to not do that by being extra cautious and staying even a little bit extra lighter. And just, I am gonna put a little bit of a line there so I don't lose what I just worked on. All that hard work getting that line, but I am going to group together all of these shadows and just get that over and done with. Doing my best to blend what I can in this background and keep it as streak free as possible by turning my pencil to the side and then working back and forth in different directions. With a freshly sharpened white pencil, I'm gonna go right in and tackle these brights. The one thing that I'm curious if this happens this time, since I'm doing it this way, I'm curious if I go the opposite way and I end up getting too heavy-handed with the lights now, which I'm gonna try very hard not to do, of course, but I am just a little bit curious if that ends up happening. This shadow I actually just saw comes down more like that. So just a small adjustment. There's a highlight there. There's a highlight like right there. I also don't know if you can see this, but you can see where I did get sloppy with my graphite and it just like isn't as white as it could be. With there. We might end up going back and tweaking some of this, but for now, that's pretty good. I am gonna go into area. These shadows are quite dark, so I'm gonna go just kind of straight in, really make some of these things pop with contrast. The other thing that I think that happened with this drawing is that my pencil wasn't as pointy and sharp as it could have been. And so I think that kind of resulted in a little bit of a sloppy first drawing. And that's just kind of one of the downsides of using a sharpener like that, is you don't get the really strong point like you would if you had done razor. But that's also kind of why I'm showing you guys this. You know, it was much sharper for these and they look quite sharp. Maybe I'll be able to salvage this, but if I don't, I'm guessing that that's a little bit of why. So right now I'm just trying to identify basically where like my dark shadows are. And if there's any mild gradients, just kind of acknowledging those as well. Wow, how funny. So this is my first drawing of the day. I just sat down. Today it's a new day from when I did those two. And it is just kind of crazy how if you don't take the time to warm up, I don't know, I notice a big difference. I feel a little all over the place and a little bit discombobulated. But that's why in previous videos, why we have like those exercises and those warm-ups so that you can get your mind in the right place before you sit down and really start creating, because otherwise you run into exactly what I'm doing. I feel like my hand-eye coordination isn't exactly where it could be. Before I go, there is a really dark shadow like right in here. And there is one like right in here, but I really want to work and get this cast shadow dark and just make sure that this shape is how I want it to look. Because there's kind of like, it's a bit of a lost edge, which I love, because then essentially that means you don't have to be perfect with it. Like your drawing can just be like ever so slightly off, and it still is going to read really well and accurately because it is disappearing. But there are still value changes that I'm trying to honor and do properly. Looking for my gradients again. This value. I'm going to go back and I'm just going to add a little, I'm going to erase a little bit here. I think I went a little bit dark with this side of the background because the value of the paper, it's more of that value, but we'll just soften that edge and then I'll go back and I will perfect that with my finger by blending it out. Going back to cast shadow, quite dark also, so this is darker, but also this like little background bit is a little bit of a lost edge. Put kind of our main shadow is like right, our core shadow, sorry. It's like right in here. It's dark there, but there is a little bit of a like bounce light kind of right in there. So yeah, let's just go a little bit there. I think with shadows, the big thing to remember is to, one, keep your values very compressed. So there's not that much change that goes on, but at that same time, there are still changes going on. And so when you're able to pick up those little nuances in gradients, but not get so carried away and so bold with them that they then look fake, it's a very fine line of acknowledging these little value shifts, but definitely not getting too brave with them or too like extreme. There's not too much of a contrast between them. Okay, and then in order to wrap this all the way around, there is a little bit of this shadow that like curves up. And then I'm just softening this edge, which I will then go back and tackle with my finger and like smudge that out a little bit. There, that'll create a nice smudgy smudge. That probably goes up a little bit like there. Okay, and then there is a shadow, pretty dark shadow right there. This part of the cloth. When I'm thinking of cloth, it's a little bit tricky in the sense where I stop thinking of it as the object itself. So you can't really think of cloth as like, oh, I'm painting cloth in folds. You just paint shapes, and you have to trust those shapes, that they end up looking like something in the end. You'll see. But like when you look at linen or fabric, it'll be like, oh, there's a line here, there's a line here. But instead of drawing the lines, try to identify the shapes you're seeing and the values associated with them. So like this one is a little bit darker, gets lighter. This one has like a little bit of a shape that way. And I'm not honestly looking for perfection right here. I'm just looking for a general conveyance of what is going on, you know? Because also the fabric is not the main purpose of this drawing. That's not where I want the attention to be. So if I leave it a little bit unfinished, that is my artistic choice so that you're not focused on it. Hopefully that made sense. Perfect. So now I'm going to go in and I'm going to, as always, I'm going to really soften. So I'm like really pressing on this background and really smearing everything into one another, because that is what I want. I want the background to be the softest of it all. And then as I get into kind of these more like subject areas, I tend to push a lot lighter. So I'm not really pushing graphite around that much. I'm just heavily pushing on edges, but not really, like on this edge, I'm kind of pushing because it's a disappearing edge. So I want that to be really blended, but like here and there where there's a harder shadow, I want that to remain crisper than everything else. So just keeping things like that in mind, which you kind of just get a feel for the more you do, but and again, just like going in the shape of the object as well. But overall, pretty happy with that. Let me just take a step back. This in the reference looks a little bit lighter, but honestly, I'm taking my artistic choice and I'm gonna fill that in, but also have it disappear a little. I'm also gonna add a little bit more distance in this shadow. So like the core deepest, darkest part, I'm moving that out just like a little bit. And same with down here. I'm gonna add just a little bit more intensity. Okay, I don't want to get too carried away, but my overall thoughts, it ended up looking really good. Things that I don't necessarily like about it is that because I got a little messy with my graphite in my initial drawing, this white pencil in this rim and lid, like really, it doesn't pop like it should. So that's kind of lost. It's messy. It didn't take the white pencil very well. That was a little bit of an issue of the pencil not being sharp enough. And so I wasn't able to get those really crisp, clean lines. It was a thicker pencil mark that was left behind. And this is such a small drawing that it just wasn't crisp. So one of the things around that is you could have drawn bigger and those little pencil marks wouldn't be as noticeable and as large. The other thing is I could have sharpened it with my razor, but I didn't. Or even the sandpaper. I could have done that too, but I didn't, and here we are. And this is kind of what happens because of that. So if I was to do this again, I would have a sharper pencil for my initial drawing so that when I do get that white down, it really pops and it really reads how it's supposed to. That whole area bothers me a little bit, and that was just because I couldn't get the pop and the clarity. But this whole area I think looks really good, and we really get a sense of three-dimensionality and shape and highlight and shadow, and overall that all looks pretty good. So those are my first drawings for this exercise session. Let me know in the comments, did you follow along with me and do the same ones, or did you use your own reference images? This was kind of the next step up as far as complexity, and in the next videos we're gonna go even more difficult and a little more varied with subject matter so that we can kind of just play around and put this into practice in other ways. And yeah, we'll just keep moving onwards and upwards and improving every single time that we show up. So thanks for joining, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.